Episode 190. When he reached the living room, the old Taoist was already standing in the large circle the crowd had formed, beginning his spell casting. He formed hand seals, planted his feet, and began to chant, the faint, elusive murmur of his incantation lending the scene an air of mystery. The gathered crowd held their breath, their eyes locked on the old Taoist's every move. Han Li listened to the incantation and rolled his eyes to himself. Just then, the old Taoist pressed his palms together, then slowly drew them apart. A blazing fireball the size of a fist materialized between his hands. The surrounding temperature spiked, and a wave of scorching heat instantly filled the air. This was the fireball technique, a spell every cultivator with a fire spirit root had to master. And yet, this most common sight among cultivators immediately drew gasps of astonishment from everyone nearby.
A fire just appeared out of nowhere. That's incredible.
I can feel the heat. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But what happened next didn't just leave the mortals stunned. Even Han Li was taken aback at first. For what happened next, the old Taoist kept forming hand seals without pause, and before everyone's eyes, the fireball on the mirror began to slowly transform. The fireball first stretched out wings, grew a beak, then formed a pair of slender claws and a tail, transforming into a delicate little flame bird.
Could this be the firebird technique?
Han Li's nerves snapped taut at the sight, his eyes nearly refusing to believe what they saw. The firebird technique was a genuine ultimate beginner spell. Even Han Li himself hadn't mastered it. Yet this old Taoist, a mere chi condensation cultivator, actually used it on the spot. That was simply too unbelievable. But Han Li's surprise lasted only a brief moment. After all, from its appearance, this small bird formed from a fireball closely resembled the spell image conjured by the firebird technique. But the difference in size was just too stark. A true firebird technique conjured a bird with a wingspan of nearly 10 feet. The old Taoist's version, however, never grew larger than a fist. They simply couldn't be compared. What truly convinced Han Li this was merely a counterfeit firebird art was the difference in the intensity of their magic power fluctuations.
The firebird conjured by the firebird art contained a destructive force that even a foundation establishment cultivator would never dare to face head-on. Yet this tiny creature, no larger than a rabbit or a sparrow, carried a magic power fluctuation identical to a simple fireball, not a shred of increase. So this is just pure transformation then.
Han Li found the whole thing equal parts exasperating and amusing.
I almost let that little chick fool me. How embarrassing. Still, his flame manipulation technique was astonishingly precise. I certainly can't control it to such a fine degree. I wonder how a chi condensation cultivator like him manages it. That old Taoist is quite interesting.
The old Taoist's next performance thoroughly confirmed Han Li's suspicions. The fiery red bird, which had been soaring high, suddenly swooped down to the ground and transformed into a red pug scampering joyfully around the old Taoist. Soon, the dog transformed into a fire serpent, and the serpent then evolved into a tiny human figure. This stunning chain of displays left the mortals, who had never seen such sorcery before, utterly dumbfounded and speechless. Then the old Taoist suddenly pointed a finger. The last transformed flame horse charged toward a small cherry tree beside them. Flames erupted, and in an instant, the tree was reduced to ashes. With that, the old Taoist ended his performance. The onlookers snapped out of their daze and frantically hailed the old Taoist as an immortal master. Any lingering doubt in their hearts had been cast aside. Not a trace of disbelief remained. The new king watched the crowd's cheers with a faint smile, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. Cultivators used to show up fairly often among the nobility and great clans, but for some reason they suddenly stopped mingling with mortals. Now, people like immortal masters have all but become legends. Even he, a member of the royal clan, was seeing a real cultivator for the first time. Now, with the old Taoist revealing this technique, the entire scene was stunned. It certainly made the new king feel he had gained great face. Of course, the new king had no idea that back in the days when cultivators often appeared in the mortal world, it was a time before the Ascension Assembly had ever come to be. Back then, rogue cultivators and low-ranking cultivators from cultivation clans who saw no hope of Foundation establishment would give up on themselves, willing to indulge in the mortal world's wealth and glory. But once the Ascension Assembly appeared, every cultivator saw a glimmer of hope for Foundation establishment. Naturally, they all retreated deep into the mountains to bitterly cultivate their techniques. Why would any of them still show themselves in the mortal world? As for the gathered guests, none of them had ever encountered another cultivator before, so naturally, they were utterly awestruck by the old Taoist's masterful display of flame manipulation. And so, under the crowd's awestruck gaze, the white-haired old man swept back into the hall with an air of pride. Naturally, those who hadn't been tested yet eagerly crowded around. This white-haired old Taoist was full of energy, examining everyone who came his way without exception. Unfortunately, among those who remained, including the old man surnamed Hua and Qin Yan's Jr., not a single one was found to possess a spirit root. They were all just ordinary mortals. This news hit the newly examined crowd hard, and they shuffled away from the old Taoist, utterly dejected. It seems fate's favor isn't so easy to come by after all. This only made the fat young man's spirit root seem all the more precious, drawing looks of pure envy from everyone else, while the father and son standing beside the old Taoist couldn't stop grinning from ear to ear. Han Li, meanwhile, watched with an unchanged expression as Qin Yan led the disheveled young masters and misses of the Qin family back to his side. The moment Qin Yan met Han Li's gaze, a trace of fluster crept into his demeanor.
I still don't accept it. Why does that useless piece of trash get a spirit root and we don't? Which one of us isn't 100 times better than him?
Hey, enough. Don't talk nonsense. You weren't meant for this fate. What's there to complain about?
Qin Yan's face darkened. He turned and scolded the young girl, then sat down. This remark made the famed little pepper of the Qin family pout, her face still full of indignation. Just then, the old man with the assumed surname walked over, the young man and woman trailing behind him. Without a word, he sat down beside Qin Yan. The two exchanged a glance, then both let out a bitter laugh at the same time, a pair of brothers in misfortune.
Ah, Brother Qin, looks like that fatty Tong is about to start a fight.
Hey, what can you say? The guy raised a good son, and now he's got an immortal master backing him up.
Old man Hua and Qin Yan started chatting away, one line after another. Though they murmured in agreement, they kept one eye on Master Wu and the new king. The new king, seeing that all the younger guests had been tested for their spiritual roots, turned to a young maidservant beside him and murmured a few instructions. The girl immediately slipped out through a side door, off on some errand or other. The new king finally turned his head back.
Now then, to celebrate my beloved wife's recovery from her strange illness, and to mark the occasion of my son and this colleague being accepted as disciples under immortal Wu, let us all feast and rejoice.
With that, the new king wasted no time, sharply clapping his hands twice. At the sound, a procession of neatly dressed servants and maids entered the hall from the main doors, bearing black lacquered trays laden with dishes of delicacies and bottles of fine wine. Then, with practiced ease, they filled every table and poured each cup with a rosy wine like crimson dew, the mingled scents of food and drink quickly filling the hall.
Come, I'll first toast you all.
By the midpoint of the banquet, the new king even summoned a pair of palace dancers from his estate, who swayed gracefully through a court dance to entertain the guests, truly pushing the atmosphere to its peak. Just then, a white-robed youth in his 20s stepped out from the hall. He was gentle and refined, with a tall, slender build. Every movement was graceful and courteous, radiating charm. the absolute image of a dream lover for most love-struck maidens.
Minger, come meet your uncles.
The new king immediately called him over. As luck would have it, the new king happened to arrive at Qin Yan's table just then, so the refined young man walked over with a smile.
Greetings, senior uncles.
No, you flatter me, young prince.
Qin Yanhe and the elderly man surnamed Hua dared not act presumptuously. They quickly rose to return the gesture.
Come now, the two of you are his elders. It's only proper that he pays his respects to you tomorrow. Why be so formal?
Qin Yan and the old man with the surname Hua exchanged a glance, looking slightly awkward.
That's true enough, but how could we two actually treat a member of the imperial clan as our own junior?
But those two were old foxes themselves, deftly steering the conversation aside with a few casual remarks before turning to introduce the younger generation to this remarkably forthright prince. After all, it was a rare chance for the juniors to shine. Naturally, Han Li was also included in Qin Yan's introductions. When Han Li was introduced, the new king's eyes lit up. He gave Han Li a long, meaningful look, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. Clearly, he was more than a little familiar with those rumors. This made the awkwardness that had just faded from Qin Yan's face surge back once more.
Minger, come over and meet your Uncle Han.
Who knew what the new king was thinking, but he cheerfully let the young prince and Han Li come face to face.
Senior brother Han.
The young prince clasped his hands toward Han Li, a gentle expression never leaving his face. This graceful young prince had the nearby eligible ladies utterly spellbound with every move he made, lost in their infatuation. Han Li returned the bow with a flustered, clumsy air, playing the part of a nervous fool to perfection. But inside, a storm was raging, and he could no longer hold his bottleneck calm. When this young prince stepped forward to offer his greeting, he gave Han Li the same dangerous feeling as the palace steward had. Though far less oppressive, it was unmistakably the same kind of danger.
What is going on here?